Back to the Middle East now. With Israeli troops poised for a possible ground war, we've asked our Lee Cowan to look at the week that was and what's to come.
The embers of war blew across the Mideast this past week, igniting even more rage and anger. The explosion that ripped through a hospital in Gaza proved to be a tragic turning point. While both the Pentagon and the Israeli military insisted Israel was not responsible, the genie was out of the bottle, and for much of the Arab world, there was no putting it back. It was into that tinderbox that President Biden left for a brief wartime visit, where he implored Israelis not to let revenge cloud their vision.
I know the choices are never clear or easy for leadership, but it requires asking very hard questions. It requires clarity about the objectives and an honest assessment about whether the path you're on will achieve those objectives.
The U.S. as Mideast peace broker is nothing new, of course. For decades, we've seen handshakes, false starts, and plenty of dead ends. Ian Bremmer, president of Eurasia Group, says it's an increasingly reluctant but necessary role.
We are living in a world where the United States is increasingly uncomfortable and unwilling to act as the global policeman, but there is no one else remotely close to playing that role.
The president used a rare Oval Office address to announce he was sending an emergency funding request to Congress that would include $14 billion in assistance for Israel and $61 billion for Ukraine.
It's a smart investment that's going to pay dividends for American security for generations. Help us keep American troops out of harm's way.
But tying assistance for Israel to money for Ukraine may have an uphill climb in Congress.
It was a defensive speech. This was a speech that attempted to explain to Americans, hey, we need to do this or else.
A speaker has not been elected.
Republicans, of course, have a more immediate problem, finding a speaker. Representative Jim Jordan's third attempt at the gavel collapsed this past Friday, and the weeks-long paralysis has left everyday Americans wondering if we can't help ourselves, how do we have the capacity to help anyone else?
Foreign wars, after all, don't feel so foreign anymore. From big cities to small towns, from the coast to the Rockies, no matter where you live. The idea of multiple crises creeping across the globe has sparked fear, division, and misunderstandings.
The raw emotions spilled out almost everywhere here at home. Supporters of Israel and backers of the Palestinian cause sometimes faced off, exchanging chants, accusations, and hate. On Capitol Hill, hundreds of protesters were arrested while calling for a ceasefire. Still, in the midst of all that noise, came a whisper of hope. Humanitarian aid started to roll into Gaza, and much to everyone's surprise, Hamas agreed to release 2 American hostages, a mother and her daughter. But those were just trickles of goodwill when the growing crisis demands a flood.